Good morning, Redhead Whiskey here, and today a huge pleasure interviewing Annabel Thomas, the founder and CEO behind Nc'nean, that is named, correct me if I'm wrong, after, I'm not going to even try to pronounce the name of the goddess, but a Gaelic goddess that is responsible for nature resources and specifically spirits.
Right.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Later you can
Nishniain
teach
is
me
the
how to
goddess
pronounce it.
name. Exactly.
Nc'nean is the first and only distillery, I believe, that produces 100% organic and uses renewable energy. Very much famous for the long fermentation that brings out the fruity flavors and the combination of casks, which is 50-50, 50% bourbon, 50% SDR, brings out delicious flavors. We're going to talk about those in a minute. So thank you so much, Annabel, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here and to chat to you.
So you have made a significant change in your life. 2013, you got up, you left a job in London, and you went and set up the farm with your parents and investors. And tell me about the what energizes you about Nc'nean to start with, and now versus 10 years ago.
So I used to work in a very corporate job in London for Bain and Company, a strategy consulting firm. It was everything you would think of as a corporate job, structured, well paid, but very demanding, very long hours, lots of travel, very little control over your own life. And I had wanted for a while to leave Bain just because I didn't want to be a strategy consultant forever. And in parallel, but not originally as the kind of destination, we'd had this idea as a family to start a whiskey distillery on our farm. And I had written the business plan, again, never actually thinking I would run it. And then those kind of two worlds coincided, and we figured that this distillery was never going to happen unless someone worked on it, and I wanted to leave Bain. And so off I went and jumped headfirst into it. And I think what energized me to do that then is luckily still what energizes me today. And I think that's because I started with this very, very clear mission. And that's still our mission today, which is all about pioneering sustainable production and creating this fruity, elegant whiskey that can bring lots of people into the wonderful world of whiskey, and using our distillery and our flexibility as an independent, relatively small distillery to also explore what innovation and lots of new flavors in whiskey can look like.
Yeah.
And that's still what we're doing today. That's still the two pillars of what we think and talk about day in, day out. So that's good, and keeps me getting up in the morning.
That's great. So what was that first whiskey encounter moment that turned on a light bulb in your head and it was like, oh, that's what I'm gonna do, or that's what I like?
It was a slightly longer journey, honestly, because I've had a long connection to Scotland. My husband loves whiskey, and I'd always tried his whiskey when he was having some. And actually, to begin with, honestly, for the first decade, I didn't like it. And then finally, two things happened at the same time. One is that I tried a whiskey that I liked. I don't know what it was, because at the time, this didn't seem like an important thing. But the second was that because I'd been thinking about writing this business plan, I went and toured some other Scotch distilleries with this newfound love of the product in my mind. And I guess that was probably the most important light bulb moment, when I really understood how traditional most of the Scotch distilleries in Scotland are.
Yeah.
And that is not, I don't see that as a problem for them. But if you look at the industry as a whole, I think it's really important that at least parts of it are forward-looking, future-looking, and thinking about the next generation of consumers and what they're looking for. And that, for me, was such an important point when I realised there was no one really thinking about sustainability, for example. And this was back in 2012, when it wasn't the buzzword that it is now.
Yeah.
But equally, I had seen through some of my other work that it was becoming really important. And I think it's really, for me, it felt very important that Scotch didn't get left behind, and that there was someone in Scotch showing that this was the future and this is what we all needed to get to quicker.
Mm-hmm. So that's something I'm very curious about. And how do you balance the, when sustainability is such a strong value for you, how do you balance the traditional production methods that are not always in line with sustainability together with those beautiful values of sustainability and organic?
Yeah. And I think the answer is that and we're not perfect, by the way. It is almost impossible for anyone
you are, but
to do things perfectly from a sustainability point of view at the moment. But what's interesting about Scotch is if you go back, it was a very agricultural farm product originally. And actually, if you do things the right way, that is quite a sustainable way of operating. It was originally a sustainable local farm product. And whilst we can't replicate that now because we're trying to be a little bit bigger than that, when you actually break down the elements of whiskey, it's really very simple. We buy an agricultural product, which is barley. So we have to make sure that we're farming in a sustainable way as possible. We then distill. So we need to make sure that that is a sustainable process. And that's not so hard because we do at least now have really good renewable sources of energy in the world to fuel that process. Water and waste, we've got really good sustainable solutions for. And so then the kind of challenges really come at the post-distilling side, which is things like packaging and distribution, and the world doesn't have the right solutions for those yet. And so we have adopted solutions that are as good as we can find, but they still require a lot more work to get to kind of perfect.
So do you think that sustainability and sticking to those values together with trying to bring the tradition and the problems that you presented, and in volume and in mass, and thinking about peat and carb and all those issues that come up with that, will that become an expectation from, especially when looking at the consumers and how important sustainability is to them? Was that going to be an expectation, or is that going to still kind of like hover around?
I think that is a great question. I think it already is an expectation from a certain segment of consumers. I think there's another segment of consumers at the other end of the spectrum who don't care now and never will care. And so the question is, what happens to the most people that are currently in the middle? And the answer is, it probably depends very much on where the world goes. I would like to think it will become an expectation. And we are already seeing that. I mean, we've already seen that change in the last 10 years. And I hope that it will continue to move in the right direction, because as consumers' expectations move, companies have to follow, and then the world ends up a better place.
So you're saying it's very much about consumer education and putting it in front of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it sounds like a big operation, especially when you're balancing sustainability and production. So what advice would you give someone who would want to set up a distillery today?
What advice would I give them? Well, from a sustainability point of view, my personal opinion is that I think you've got to start knowing that you can do that sustainably. Because I think, given what we know about global warming and water issues and biodiversity and all those other things, I at least couldn't sleep at night if I started a distillery today that wasn't as sustainable as possible. That would be my starting principle. Obviously, not everyone agrees with that, but for me, that's very important. I do think the consumer is expecting it more, so that's also a good reason to do that. But my primary advice would be that you need a lot of money.
Yeah.
Know where you're going to get your funding from before you even take your first step.
Yeah.
And of course, you also need to know why you exist. And this comes back to the first question you asked me. It's a really long journey. It's going to be quite hard. And if you don't have a really burning fire of why you're doing it, you're going to end up giving up or feeling very depressed. So I think that's the most, don't start a distillery just because you like whiskey or because you think it might be fun. You've got to have a really clear purpose.
How do you keep that fire going? How do you keep it going?
Because I really strongly believe in our mission. I think that's it. That mission hasn't changed. And I think Scotch is amazing. It's got this incredible tradition. It's an incredible quality product. I'm really passionate about more people discovering it. But I also know that if that's going to continue for the next 50 years, if Scotch is going to thrive for the next 50 to 100 years, it needs to move forward. And I can feel that it is moving. And we know from the conversations that we have that the rest of the Scotch industry is looking at what we're doing and thinking, we maybe ought to do that quicker or more of it or whatever. So I find that very inspiring as well.
So what is your favorite? I mean, I tasted at 7 a.m. in the morning. I am happy to have a taste with you.
I love it.
I've heard that that's the best time for...
Absolutely.
And, I shared with you when we just started chatting that the Huntress lemon is phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
I can. So this has been my favorite whiskey all summer, actually, Huntress Lemon Meadow. So we have 2 special editions that we release each year, kind of limited single batches, one under our Huntress label and one under our Quiet Rebels label. And Huntress, we called it Huntress for a couple of reasons. One is that it refers to Nc'nean, who we mentioned at the beginning, who is our Gaelic goddess and our guiding star. And
let's pronounce the name together. The
Nc'nean.
Nc'nean. Okay, in a bit of a...
You can see why we didn't call the brand Nc'nean and shortened it to Nc'nean. And she was a huntress. So we named this series after her, but it is also all focused on the experiments and the hunting for flavour that we do in our spirit production. And my observation coming into the whiskey industry, not having been in it before, is that there's a huge focus on the barrels, which is fine, especially if you're selling an old whiskey. Barrels do have a big influence, and there's a huge range of flavours you can create with barrels. But no one was really thinking about the spirit anymore. And that is, for me, a shame, because the spirit's amazing, and the flavours that you can create in the spirit before you even put it in a barrel is really interesting to me. And so most of our Huntress releases have been about that exploration of flavour and spirit and what drives it and what creates it and how we can play with it. And Huntress Lemon Meadow is no exception. And this actually is the reason we called it Lemon Meadow is because it's got this lovely lemony floral flavour profile, and it just made us think of walking through a summer meadow. And Nc'nean always has this kind of citrusy flavour profile anyway, but it's just really amplified in this release. And the way we made it is through playing with yeast. Now, yeast is not something that's talked about very much in whiskey, but ultimately we are brewers. As whiskey distillers, we are brewers that happen to distill our beer. And yeast is really important in flavour creation in that beer brewing process. So we spend a lot of time thinking about yeast and fermentation lengths and all these other factors. And the yeast that we went into making Lemon Meadow, we used or experimented with in 2017. It was a yeast that was originally derived from champagne production. And we did a 2-week distillation with it in 2017. And interestingly, unlike some of our other yeast experiments, it's taken quite a while to come of age. But this year, it suddenly was like, I'm ready.
So when you say 2-week distillation, it means that it went through the wash and spirits and then sat in the tanks, or how does that?
No, I mean we did 2 weeks worth of distillation. So quite a big run of it.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
Enough to make.
Because I'm curious about the fermentation process. You're one of the most famous ones for such a long fermentation, and I'm guessing that.
Exactly. So our normal fermentation, so for Huntress Lemon Meadow or for any of the other Nc'neans you've tried, is a mixture between some 68 and some 114-hour ferments. So the standard length in Scotch is about 60. So both of those are longer. In particular, 114 hours is longer. And we have those 2 fermentation lengths actually produce, again, a kind of breadth and depth of flavour that we capture and we mix together. And then this summer, we are actually doing super, super, super long fermentations. These won't see the light of day for 5 years, so don't get too excited, everybody, because...
But when you say super, 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 I'm curious. I'm kind of like running numbers in my head.
2 weeks.
Wow. How
Yeah,
many hours is that?
which
I'm trying to calculate that. That's
24 times 14, who can do that quickest?
wow, it's
Gordon, our distillery manager, has
insane.
actually done this calculation. 2-week fermentations is making Gordon extremely nervous, but I'm really excited about it. And we've tasted the wash, and it is really different. And I just can't wait to see what happens to that
5 years.
whiskey for.
Okay. We'll meet again in 5
5
years.
years time, exactly.
Yeah.
See you here.
This is fantastic. The lemon one is just fantastic. It's beautiful. It is fruity. It's fresh. It's so clear. I love it.
And it's also got, I think we had all butter shortbread as the tasting note. It's got this lovely butteriness to it, and
Yes,
that's definitely also a kind of Nc'nean feature, if you like. All of our whiskies have this lovely oiliness, which I
the
think,
oiliness.
yeah,
The oiliness does come through. So that's a part of that's a result of the fermentation or the distillation, the yeast, the barley.
I think it starts with the barley,
Mm-hmm.
and then it is amplified by all of those other steps. But the barley, so we only source 100% organic Scottish barley.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said in your intro, we're the only distillery in Scotland to be dedicated to 100% organic barley. And that barley reaches us as a more interesting grain than conventionally farmed barley. It's had to fight for its survival, but it's also had the benefit of a very nutrient-rich soil because it's not benefited from artificial fertilizers. So you get this very tasty barley, if you like, to start with. And then the way that the yeast that we use, the long fermentations and the very slow distillations then amplify and then capture that oiliness.
So can you tell me a little bit about the Quiet Rebels, Amy Organic?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can. So Quiet Rebels is our other limited edition series, and that comes
Mm-hmm.
out generally in autumn, at least in the UK. And this is about celebrating people. So we are known for our kind of environmental sustainability, but people is obviously also just as important. And this has kind of been built into our philosophy from the beginning. We're in a very, very, very remote part of Scotland, in a very small community. And another part of our inspiration for creating a distillery there, which is otherwise really quite an impractical place to have a distillery, was to create local employment. And skilled, long-term, long-term, year-round employment. And our Quiet Rebels series is our way of celebrating our team.
Please.
And you get your Quiet Rebels in the order that you join the company.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of planning for it starts about a year before. So you'll get to sit down with our blender, Matt, and different people have different approaches to it, but basically we're trying to design a whiskey to your tastes.
Wow.
And that can be done in lots of different ways, and it's been done in lots of different ways across all of the ones that we've released so far. But in Amy's case, Amy is our head of sustainability. She loves port finished whiskey, but she wanted her release to reflect something specific about the sustainability side of her role, which is quite a hard brief because we're already pretty sustainable. So we needed to find a kind of extra sustainability layer to put on top. And we were lucky enough to find some very interesting casks actually from France. And it is a fortified wine from France. So made in a kind of similar way to port, although it's obviously not port, but from a super sustainable wine producer. And it's delicious, isn't it? Quite different to Lemon Meadow.
Yes, it has a stronger, tiny bit of plumish touch to it, which I can now relate from the port. But it's so subtle, and it does weave into the floral notes in a very subtle way. Very subtle.
It's also I think definitely kind of jammier and sweeter as well, which all comes from this cask finish. So yeah, we found these casks from a super sustainable producer in France, and they produce a wine called Mori, which is not very well known, but it is this super sweet wine, not dissimilar to port. And they farm biodynamically. All of their products are certified organic. They practice agroforestry. Just a really lovely kind of meshing of two missions together. And so we use those ports to create those mochi casks, to create Amy's Quiet Rebels edition.
Beautiful. The other two that I tried are the organic single malt for 46% and the cask strength version of it, the 59, that I really adored. As you can really feel the distillery profile in it, the floralness, the gentleness, and still, at a cask strength level, it's beautiful.
Exactly. And so Nc'nean Organic, that 46% one, is our kind of flagship. That's our main product and the one, that's always available. And then cask strength is just like a much more intense version of that.
So what's your favorite?
Well, I always say this is a bit like choosing your favorite child. It's not possible, because it always depends on it depends on where you are, what you're doing. I've all summer I have loved Lemon Meadow, but I do quite often turn to cask strength, just because it's got this real. It's very mouth-watering. That's the best way I can describe it. It's got this fruity, elegant profile. It's got the citrus notes. It's got the that texture and oiliness, but it's just got that extra mouth-watering capacity, which I really love. So after a long day, I really love the cask strength.
What is your favorite non-Nc'nean expression then?
Oh, now this is a very hard question to answer. I also can't help with whiskey but layer on not only the taste but also the kind of broader context of the distillery. If I go to a bar and they have got a big whiskey selection, I always first of all, but not Nc'nean, or I don't want to drink Nc'nean, or I've had too much Nc'nean, Bruichladdich is always one of my first go-tos.
Okay.
And there's a few reasons for that. I love their taste profile. I also love their mission, and I have also really taken inspiration from them for a very long time. I remember spending a lot of time in kind of 2011, 2012 thinking about them. They really stuck their neck out in Scotch pretty early on. That bright blue bottle was a big departure for Scotch, and I feel we've also stuck our necks out, but they went first. And so I think that kind of, a trailblazer, if you like, I really see them as that. They're also a certified B Corp, as we are. I just have a lot of respect for what they do. I also love their Octomores, really heavily peated. I'm generally I don't go for a peated whiskey. It's not my go-to. But if I am going to, I like to go really extreme and drink an Octomore. So given that's also under the Bruichladdich banner, that's a nice place to start. But I also, I have very eclectic whiskey tastes, and one of my favorite things is actually to go into a bar and try whiskey I've never tried before.
Yeah, that's the best.
Exactly.
That's the best. So is there anything that I haven't asked you about and you would like to share?
Oh gosh, probably a lot, but I feel like we've covered loads. No, I think that's been wonderful.
Well, we're waiting for you here in New Jersey and New York. I have 3 clubs, and whenever you're around, we would love to have you over and to learn everything about Nc'nean and to hear everything.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I will let you know. I'm actually coming at the end of the month, but I only have 3 days, and they are chock-a-block. But
next time,
and anyway, that I'm sure will be too soon for you to organise anything. But I'm often in New York and New Jersey, so I will absolutely let you know.
I would love that.
We'll organise something that would be so fun.
Yes, and we haven't talked about the fact that you're such a strong female leader in that industry, which is phenomenal, and a role model and an inspiration. And our club has over 40% of women, so I think we would love to hear everything from you.
I've really felt like in the last couple of years, as I've started to understand more about the US whiskey market, that there are more female whiskey drinkers in the US, and it's more of a thing, which I just find awesome. I find that very exciting. So
yeah, they're cask strength women.
Exactly. So is that 3 separate whiskey clubs?
Yeah, it's
Or
3 separate clubs, and they're located 2 different areas in Jersey and in New York. And we just meet regularly and host brands and hear the story
and what is the club got one name for all locations or 3 separate names?
Redhead Whiskey.
Oh, it's Redhead Whiskey. Oh, easy. Great.
Redhead Whiskey, and then based on the location, Bergen, Hoboken, and New York. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, well, you can consider that a date next time I'm in New York.
Perfect.
We'll do it.
Thank you so much, Annabel.
It's so nice to meet you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful weekend.
Thank you.
I mean, I can see rays of light, and so the sun is out there. It's a good day. The sun
is out after 2 days of torrential downpours, so it's very nice that the sun has decided to make an appearance before the weekend.
It was kind enough to make an appearance.
Exactly.
All right, Annabel. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks again. Lovely to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.